Everybody, welcome to the Placer County Board of Supervisors meeting of Tuesday, January 12th, 2010. That's hard to even say. Think about it. Our flag salute this morning will be led by Supervisor Wygant.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So would you read the meeting procedures, please? Ann?
Welcome to the Placer County Board of Supervisors meeting of Tuesday, January 12th, 2010. Agendas are available on the wall outside this meeting room. If you are here to speak on an issue not appearing on the agenda, you may do so during the public comment period. There's a 3-minute time limit per speaker. The board is not permitted to take action on items addressed under public comment. When you speak, clearly state your name and address for the record. All items on the agenda will be open for the public to address before final action is taken. There is a 3-minute time limit per speaker, which will be monitored by a timer on the podium. If there is a person speaking on behalf of a group with no other testimony from another member of the group, please identify yourself as such, and your time may be extended at the pleasure of the board. Keep in mind that the chairman has the discretion of limiting the total discussion time on any item. If you are hearing impaired, we have listening devices available. It is requested that all pagers and cell phones be either turned off or put in the silent mode. Thank you for your participation and cooperation.
Thank you, Ann. Now we come to the part where we're going to change seats and have the reorganization of the board. I just make a few comments that this last year has been an honor to serve as the chair of this board, and we were faced with so many obstacles put in front of us, and I think that overall we handled them, I think, in the best manner we could, dealing with what we had to deal with. And it's a credit to the board that we worked together and not against each other, and that was a real credit. So I was honored to be in this position, and I will now change chairs with Kirk. Well, I guess we have the nomination first, and then Kirk and I will change. So I can't. I get Jennifer. You wanted to nominate?
Yeah, actually, following on your comments of, the board working so well together, I wanted to remind everyone that actually 1 year ago, tomorrow, Supervisor Euler and I nominated Supervisor Rockholm for chair. And today I have the pleasure to do the same for Supervisor Euler, nominate him for chair for the upcoming year. I believe, if I understand how this process works correctly, I hope that Supervisor Wygant will join me with a second, since it's my understanding that you will likely be vice chair. So, I would like to nominate Supervisor Euler to be chair of the Placer County Board of Supervisors for the upcoming year.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So we do the vice chair and then switch seats, or do the vice chair? So now, who wants to do a nomination for vice chair?
I would like to nominate Supervisor Wygant to serve as vice chair in the year 2010.
I'll be more than happy to second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
Mr. Rockholm, if you would please join me down front. Podium mic is on. Great. The first act as chair is to take up his gavel speech. Rocky, I want to extend our thanks from your colleagues on the board, from staff. As you alluded, it has been an interesting year, 2009. Hopefully things are looking up from here. Your steady hand of leadership as chairman helped us through it, so I just want to thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we will proceed this morning with public comment. Any members of the board have any item they wish to discuss in front of the board on a matter not on our agenda, this is the time to do it. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes. Seeing none, we'll go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry, please come on up. Right up here at the podium, please, sir.
Good morning to the board. My name is Tim Hare. I live at 12480 Nelson Drive here in Auburn. And because I haven't been able to get a bunch of answers, I decided to stop by this morning. I would like to open a medical marijuana dispensary on Loxley Lane. I'm not too sure about the process, but I thought I'd start here. Is that it? Is that where I stop, or?
I'd be happy to provide you a little bit of direction to the planning department. And
They sent me here.
They sent you here?
Yeah.
Oh, really? Okay. I know that our board will be addressing a zoning text amendment a little bit later in the year. I believe maybe January, February-ish. We're scheduled to hear an item. I'm sorry?
January, February, the planning commission season.
Oh, it goes to the planning commission, January, February? Okay. So I think what you might want to do is make sure that those notices are received by you. So if there is a distribution list for that item, planning would have it, and make sure that you're on that distribution list.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. We'll go ahead and move on with supervisor committee reports. Any member of the board have anything they wish to report back about committee activities? Supervisor Holmes?
Last night I had the opportunity to present a commendation to the Rockland High School football team that represented Placer County very well. They went to the state championship down in Southern California and lost by 3 points, a field goal as time was running out on the scoreboard. But I think overall our Placer County High School football teams did exceptionally well throughout the district, throughout the area, and I just wanted to acknowledge that. So thank you.
Supervisor Wagner?
And with that, last night I attended the Lincoln High School Zebra football banquet, and when I presented the commendation to the team, I actually thanked them especially because for me they won a lunch of my choice from Supervisor Holmes to the restaurant that I pick, and I was especially pleased to let them know that they had done that for me.
Supervisor Montgomery?
My husband, I'm sure, will be very pleased to hear I've done nothing with any football teams. In December, a number of us go up to the grand opening of the Ritz-Carlton in North Star at the east end of the 5th District. It was a great event. We've got about almost 300 people hired locally to service the visitors who are going to be coming to this new area, this new resort in our area. And I'm really looking forward to a continued relationship between the county and the Ritz-Carlton, increased TOT, increased revenues of all sorts coming into the county, but most importantly from my perspective is the jobs. And so I really wanted to mention that opening did occur. They had a very good Christmas season. Also in the east end of the county, I've been in a number of meetings with some of the TRPA governing board members about the Kings Beach Commercial Core Improvement Project, which is going to be coming back in front of the TRPA governing board at the end of this month. Those meetings have been largely positive, and I want to thank Supervisor, now Chairman Mueller. He is intending to come up and make a comment on behalf of, or a statement on behalf of the county at that meeting, and I am hoping that this will actually move forward and allow us to get some really positive redevelopment going in the Kings Beach area. And then last but certainly not least, starting last Friday and going through this Saturday in the Tahoe Basin area from Boreal Ridge on Donner Summit all the way to the state line the state line and the county line at El Dorado County is an Olympic celebration, celebrating the 1960 Olympics. A ton of wonderful events still to come this week. I strongly encourage anyone who can get up there to get up there. And a few of us, I think, are going to be at the Nordic celebration on Friday evening at Grand Labakan. Opportunity to meet Olympians, living Olympians from the 1960s. Just one of those things that if you don't take advantage of, you'll probably kick yourself. So if you get the opportunity, get up there. Thank you.
The Ritz opening, that was December 9th?
Yes.
I understand it was only about a week and a half later they were finally able to remove Supervisor Holmes from his room? No, wasn't that?
Actually, that was Mike Boyle.
All right, anything else? Well, I appreciate Supervisor Holmes, I appreciate your comments about Rockland and what they did. It was my sincere hope that after the relative vitriol that the last football season brought upon this board, that a team from a neutral corner, since both Supervisor Wygant and Supervisor Holmes represent a part of Rockland, that a team from a neutral corner would bring the two of you together. And I'm glad that you extended the olive branch, and I'm sorry Supervisor Wygant knocked it out of your hand the way that he did. But I hope that under my leadership we might work to bring the two of you a little closer on that. Robert, you crack me up. All right, we'll move on to consent at this point. If there's nothing else on supervisors' reports, any board members have any items they wish to have removed from consent before we take action on the entire agenda? Yes, ma'am.
I would ask that items 17B and D be removed from consent for discussion.
Okay, that was item 17B, Bravo, and D, Delta. Is that correct? Okay, items 17B and D will be removed. Prior to entertaining a motion, any members of the public have any items on consent that they might like to have removed for discussion? And seeing none, I'll entertain a motion on the remainder of the consent agenda.
Move approval of the remaining items minus 17B and D.
We have a motion by Supervisor Rockholm, second by Supervisor Wygant to approve consent minus 17B and D. Roll call, please.
Rockholm?
Rockholm?
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry.
You're used to going last, I understand.
I'm used to going
Transition.
last. It took me a year to get trained. Now I'm going to have to get untrained. Yes.
Wygant? Yes. Holmes? Montgomery? Euler?
Aye. All right, now, if we may, item 17B. Tom, would that be you, or?
Yes, actually, I'll do an intro if we could take both of them at the same time. These are two merit increases. One is for the Economic Development Director, and one is for the Deputy Agricultural Commissioner. Their annual merit increases are for recommended action to be approved.
Okay, Supervisor Montgomery, any questions or comments on the item?
I really don't have any questions. What I do have is just a comment, which is I work both with Dave Snyder and Josh Hunsiger. Understand that they do excellent jobs. They serve the community incredibly well. They are very responsive both to folks here at the county and in the community. And do a great job of shepherding taxpayer dollars. My concern is just with the merit process at this point, with the budget shortfalls that we're facing here at the county. I just don't believe it's appropriate to be giving merit raises at this point in time. It has absolutely no reflection on these individuals. As I say, I think they're doing terrific jobs. I just don't think this is the right time to be giving merit increases. That's it.
Any comments?
Only comment would be that I think this has been before the board several times in different variations, that you have a group of managers that do require your review in terms of the unclassified managers, in terms of the merit increases that go to the PPO general unit, in which number in excess 1,800 individuals, as well as classified management, do not come in front of your board, and so would be signaling out a particular group to deny their merit increases.
Okay, any other board members have any comments? I would simply say that I share your concern about the seemingly constant escalation in wage and expense associated with our total employee pool. And I look forward, as we move forward into this budget year, look forward to working with you and the rest of the board to figure, and the management and confidential employees and the public employees union, to figure out how we take some steps to address this. I think, though, from an equity standpoint, to simply, at this point, mid-budget year, to simply be calling out certain individuals instead of the entire employee pool for waiving of those increases is not necessarily in keeping, is not necessarily in good faith with the way that we negotiated with them in the past. And so I share your sentiment, but I believe we have at least a moral obligation at this point, while under this contract, to see this through. And as we begin negotiations on a new agreement, which management and confidential employees are already leading the way on, I think we may very well see some changes there that would suit your desire. So with that, I will entertain a motion on both 17B and 17D. Okay, a motion, Supervisor Holmes, second Supervisor Wygant, to approve items 17B and D. We'll ask for roll call, please.
Holmes?
Aye.
Rockholm?
Yes.
Wygant? Montgomery? Euler?
Aye. Thank you. Okay, we have a minute or two before 9:20. So why don't we go ahead with item 5A while we wait the clock to tick toward 9:20.
Good morning, Chairman Euler. Congratulations on your appointment, and good morning, members of the board. My name is April Pay. I'm with the Procurement Services Division, and I'm here to present Agenda Item 5A for your approval, which is the renewal of a blanket purchase order with ProTech Monitoring. This is for GPS-based electronic monitoring services for the Probation Department. This award is based on a competitively bid public agency cooperative agreement awarded by the State of Washington on behalf of WSCA, the Western States Contracting Alliance, of which the State of California is a member. With your approval, a blanket purchase order will be issued in the maximum amount of $440,000 for a one-year period. And with that, I'd like to ask if you have any questions about this item.
Board members have any questions? Motion, Supervisor Wygant, second by Supervisor Rockholm, to approve the item. Just under discussion, a word, if you have it, about the successful implementation thus far of the electronic monitoring program here in Placer County, and what it has done from an avoided cost standpoint to allow us to avoid the cost of incarceration by utilizing this tool.
Mr. Hopper?
Yes, Marshall Hopper, Probation Manager.
Please press the button there in front of you so we can light up your mic there. Thank you.
There you go. Marshall Hopper, Probation Manager. We implemented the involuntary alternative sentencing program over a year ago. At that time, the jail population was 601, or 93% of the rated capacity. Since we began increasing our alternative sentencing programs, specifically the involuntary program, the jail population has remained below that consistently, not always, but consistently, as the jail population fluctuates randomly between 20 to 30, sometimes 40 inmates per week. But the implementation of this program and the use of electronic monitoring equipment has played a major role in reducing early releases. In addition, played a major role in the calculations of the jail construction down at South Placer. I would like to also note that on December 29th, we also implemented a new pretrial release program, which will entail home confinement release pretrial, which is different than the past. This will provide us another opportunity to place individuals on electronic monitoring rather than keeping them incarcerated in our jail. The overall impact would be the reduction of the jail bed jail bed construction costs down in South Placer.
Great, thank you. And I'd like to point out as well that the use of this tool is not something that probation just decided upon of their own free will, that we have a very active public safety group that works together between the district attorney's office, the sheriff's office, probation, to identify those candidates that are suitable for this program, not presenting public safety risks, and utilizing this program to reduce our overall costs within our criminal defense, our criminal justice system. So thank you for embracing that, and Supervisor Holmes.
Oh, I just wanted to thank Steve Pecor and your department for the fine work you do as far as reducing our cost, and this is a statewide, leading the state in this program, and I just want to acknowledge that and appreciate the job that you guys are doing.
Thank you. So I apologize. We had a motion, Rock Holmes, second. Wygant, was that correct? Okay.
Made the motion, I said.
Yes.
I'm sorry?
Why can't Rockholm?
Wygant made the motion. I'm sorry. All right. Any other comments from board members? All in favor, please say aye. 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 Opposed? None. Thank you. Okay. We'll go ahead with the. Thank you very much. We'll go ahead with the 920. Mr. Ritchie, would you please come up? This is one of the fun things that a chairman gets to do. Gets to call out individuals from time to time, generally in a good way.
I hope so.
This time being no exception, and recognize them for years of service. Now, while we have the opportunity to do so, sometimes it's with a little bit of mixed emotion, because typically when we're doing this, it means that very valued employee is on their way out the door to retirement, to something other than showing up here and listening to us. So at this time, I want to take this opportunity on behalf of the board to thank Albert for his 25 years of service to Placer County. I want to read some items that are in the resolution that is before our board today, thanking you. Whereas Mr. Ritchie began his career with the county in November of 1984 as an account administrator, quickly promoted through the ranks to administrative services officer, Albert assisted Lariato in the development of the Department of Facility Services. His administrative and budgetary expertise was instrumental in laying the foundation for facility services. In 1996, Albert was promoted to deputy director, ultimately leading the Parks, Property Management, and Administration divisions. During Albert's tenure, the Parks Division developed new park facilities throughout the county, including Hidden Falls Park, Gould, Squaw Valley, Granite Bay, Tree Lake, Ron Feist, Sterling Point, and Franklin School Parks. Major improvements were also made at the Forest Hill and Loomis Community Parks, the Sheridan Park, and the Dutch Flat Community Swimming Pool, greatly enhancing recreational opportunities throughout the county. Throughout his career, Albert has provided administrative support and professional guidance to many commissions, committees, agencies, and community groups, including the West Placer Waste Management Authority, the Municipal Advisory Councils, the Parks Commission, and the Veterans Hall Boards. Albert has taught a generation of employees how to develop and manage budgets, leaving a legacy of strong fiscal management in the Facility Services Department. Albert has volunteered tirelessly to assist with employee events, public events, fundraisers, and parties, coordinating barbecues, picnics, ice cream socials, award ceremonies, etc. Albert's involvement in these events is the professional manifestation of his very generous character and his personal commitment to charity. Now, therefore, be it resolved that this Placer County Board of Supervisors does hereby thank and commend Albert Ritchie for his 25 years of dedicated public service and expresses its sincere wishes for a happy and fruitful retirement. So before we let you say anything, we're going to let your boss have a shot at you one last time, and then you get rebuttal, okay?
I better be careful, because the statute of limitations may not have expired on some of the things that I could say about Albert. You know, there's a lot of talk nowadays about employee benefits, and I would submit that the most important benefit that we have isn't our retirement benefit, it's not our health benefits, it's getting to make good friends while we work. Albert, it's been all of that.
The podium is yours.
He had to be careful, I have pictures. Actually, the only comments I'd like to make is I'd like to thank you as a board for the guidance you've given us over the years and the opportunities you've provided for me. Along with the county executive's office, I think this department, or this county has been very well run over the years in my tenure here. I'd also like to thank, most importantly, the citizens of Placer County. Without them, there's no need for the rest of us to be here. Hopefully, over the last 25 years, I didn't irritate too many of them and didn't create more issues than I resolved for you. And with that, I feel like I'm a very lucky person. Having been an Auburn native, to be able to continue my adult work career in the same town where I was born and raised, I think is very special. So, thank you.
Well, Supervisor Rockholm has...
I just wanted to add, I first met Albert in 2000 when I was appointed to the Waste Authority Board, and I've sat on that board ever since, along with Supervisor Wygant. But Albert, you gave us great direction out there, and I think it's a testament to how your work ethic was. We were able to pay off bonds, I believe it was 10 years early, so that authority is debt-free, which is an absolute blessing, I think, and especially in this economy. Thank you for your hard work, and do enjoy your retirement. It's the best job you'll ever have.
Albert, another special thanks. A lot of years working together, a lot of meetings, a lot of night meetings at places like the Sheridan Max, so I appreciate your special attention to detail and the diligence with which you took the seriousness of your job. Thanks. It's been great.
Supervisor Montgomery?
I have not known Albert very long at all, but in the time I have known him, he has just been an absolute jewel and wonderful to work with. And I sincerely hope that you will be able to join us this spring when we finally relight the Forest Hill softball field. I'm going to make sure you get that invitation, and I'm going to hold you to showing up there, because the folks in Forest Hill owe you a great debt, and as we owe them a great debt for helping us in that project. So thank you.
And Supervisor Holmes?
You can't go around Placer County without going to one of our parks, and we always see the stamp that you left on it, and your dedication and commitment to making those things the best projects they could be, and they are. We're really proud of our parks in Placer County, and much of that has to do with the work that you provided for us. So thank you. I wish you well in your retirement.
Albert, again, on behalf of the board, thank you so much. And item B will be presented by Supervisor Wygant.
Mr. Gresham, let's all come up. I'm going to read this one here. I'll join you in a minute. All these youngsters retiring, but after 15 years on the board, it's amazing how quickly it zips along. Whereas the Placer County Resource Conservation District is an independent and governing body dedicated to identifying natural resource management, conservation issues, providing education, technical assistance, or direction to private landowners, operators, and local entities. Whereas the purpose of the RCD is to independently and in collaboration with other local, state, and federal agencies implement programs and plans to conserve and enhance the natural resources of the district while inspiring and mobilizing public conservation awareness and involvement. And whereas Rich Gresham started his work with the Placer Resource Conservation District in 1976 as manager and has been instrumental in the development of positive collaborative relationships developed over the years between Placer County and the RCD, an achievement he is most proud of and one he considers his greatest accomplishment. And whereas from 2006 to 2008, under Rich's leadership, the Placer County RCD administered an annual budget of approximately $1.5 million, collaborated with 5 federal agencies, 7 state agencies, 5 regional organizations, 8 local jurisdictions, several nonprofits, and many private individuals to successfully accomplish their goals as reflected in their annual plan of work and the strategic long-range plan adopted by the RCD board. Whereas since their development, Rich supported and promoted the formation of local fire-safe councils in Placer County and has participated in the Placer County Fire Safe Alliance since its inception. Whereas Placer County RCD fiscally manages Placer County Chipper program, that has assisted 23,874 residents by chipping 46,681 tons of fuel over the past 5 years at no cost to those residents. Partners in this effort are the U.S. Forest Service, Bureau of Land Management, California Department of Forestry, CAL FIRE now, Placer County, local fire departments, local fire safe councils. Whereas Rich helped to organize collaborative watershed-based efforts on behalf of Placer County, stakeholders-based efforts included federal and state agencies, counties, municipalities, local agencies, nonprofits, citizens in a watershed-based effort to address resource issues. 7 watershed councils are now active and have sustained their efforts over the last 10 years and gained funding for watershed coordinators to coordinate the pursuit of funding to implement projects identified in watershed management plans, and each council collaboratively is developed. Tens of thousands of dollars have flowed into Placer County as a result of these individual watershed planning efforts. Whereas the accomplishments and involvement of Rich during his tenure with Placer County Resource Conservation District are too numerous and significant to list individually, but it is safe to say that Rich has had a hand in all significant conservation efforts developed and sustained over the past 33 years in Placer County. Whereas now that with his retirement at hand, Rich will fully enjoy time with his wife of 44 years, Kathy, their daughter Erica, their grandson Bryce, while enjoying the outdoors, fishing, traveling, puttering around his 5 acres. Therefore, let it be known that on this 12th day of January 2010, the Placer County Board of Supervisors takes great pleasure in thanking Rich for his partnership in conservation over the last 33 years. So, going to bring this to you, but before that, I want to personally thank you, Rich. When I came to the board 15 years ago, you and I started working together on a watershed effort, Auburn Ravine, that has led to some significant work and progress on hoping to achieve a regional solution to water service at a better cost and better results to our residents over time, we hope. And a lot of the introductions that you made for me back then has served me well over the whole 15 years and are still useful as it relates to work on the conservation plan. So with that, I'm just going to finish by saying that I'm glad you now have this extra time to work on your fly fishing, because actually he needs a fair amount of practice.
That's good.
It's been a pleasure, of course.
You get a chance.
Oh, I get a chance to talk.
Why don't you let Anita take a picture of the two of you, Robert? You want to read? There you go.
Thank you.
Gotta get a bigger fish than that bluegill.
It's been a pleasure. It's seriously been a pleasure all these years working with you and previous supervisors as well as staff. I can't tell you how much fun I've had with your staff. They've been great. They currently are great and serve you well. Forming these partnerships has been a lot of fun. I know we've accomplished an awful lot, and I look forward to you actually working with the RCD in the future to accomplish more. That's about it, you guys. It's been great.
Well, Robert made the comment about now you have time to putter around your 5 acres.
Yeah.
I suspect there isn't a whole lot of puttering when it comes to you. You probably attack it with vigor, the same vigor that you have all these years with the various issues that have come before you, and thank you for your assistance to the residents of Placer County.
It's been my pleasure. My pleasure. And you should see the list of stuff that Kathy
Thank you very much. Okay, let's move on to department item 6A, Community Development Resource Agency Audit. Allison is here.
Good morning, Allison Carlos. I'm going to be going through items 6A and 6B for the County Executive Office on your agenda. And I'm going to lead off with the audit of the Community Development Resource Agency. While I may be presenting this item, I do want to acknowledge Kathy Martinez, our County Auditor, Controller, and Clark Moots, the Director of Administrative Services, as well as their staff, who have really put together the primary elements of the audit. in cooperation with CEDRA. And to clarify the action, staff is requesting that you accept this summary report of the audit findings, and that you would direct and authorize the county executive officer to implement recommendations. Early in 2009, at the request of the county executive officer, the audit of CEDRA for financial and operations was initiated, and the audit represents the first of anticipated departmental financial audits that will occur in the county to review department alignment with policy and rules for cost savings and efficiency. This audit did evaluate the use of technology, application of internal controls with respect to financial management, purchasing, employee management, and application of policies. I would highlight that this is a point-in-time assessment that covers almost a 5-year period of time since the consolidation of land development in 2005. And during that period, after the original reorganization, while managing a cumulative gross expenditure budget approaching $100 million, there were numerous organizational changes in CEDRA, structurally, programmatically, managerially. A noteworthy point in terms of leadership is during that same period of time, we had 3 different CEDRA directors. With respect to the CEDRA change journey, and to some extent beginning in 2003, county leadership identified the pending tsunami growth in Placer County and recognized the prudence of assessing critical land development processes in order to establish an appropriate structure. Since that time, in that assessment, numerous recommendations have been implemented, such as that consolidation under one director, increased communication with stakeholders, reduced process review times. And during those peak years, roughly the period time covered by the audit, CEDRA had a substantial increase in workload. On the heels of the successes for the public and other external customers, and with the numerous organizational and personnel changes that occurred, this audit was performed to further inform for areas of enhancement. The staff report provides significant information on the findings and follow-up actions by CEDRA, including notation of the plan to address improvement needs by the end of this fiscal year. In terms of the findings in general, while CEDRA has been successful in developing a number of internal systems, processes, the audit does find and identify that within the areas of administrative and accounting, internal controls need to be enhanced. For example, documentation, approval of expenses, and use of credit cards. The majority of the findings fall within a category of insufficient internal controls within processes, with a couple of instances of questionable purchases. In direct response to the findings, initial actions from CEDRA have included preparation of documentation for approval of use of credit card for credit card expenses. Staff is now trained with the auditor, and there will be some ongoing training to affirm understandings of rules and policies, and a number of other things in your staff report are listed. Relative to automation, in 2003, the Placer land use system was brought online, and thereafter a number of automated systems were brought online to improve customer service at the front counter, improve automation in terms of electronic document storage. The audit identifies that these systems are generally operating as designed, which is good, and there are, however, common recommendations for improvements. I won't go through the whole list, but basically centralization of documentation for development of policies and procedures. For PLUS specifically, there is a need for some increased consistency of use by users, as that affects other systems such as accounting. CEDRA also has taken actions to start to implement those recommendations, and that's a pretty long list in your staff report, so I won't go through that. With respect to how the agency operates with cohesive management and shared use of resources, there was a review of the implementation of the 2003 assessment recommendations, and we surveyed stakeholders and leadership staff. As I mentioned, numerous recommendations have been implemented as a result of that original assessment. The results of the survey relative to the outside stakeholders is that they were very favorable. The consolidation in one building was looked upon very favorably. There was clarity from the county on application and the requirements of the county. That was articulated. Overall knowledge of staff and improvement in timely service delivery was also identified as a positive. The results of the surveys of key personnel on operational administrative practices indicate that while the agency has established some reporting communication and performance expectation norm, there is variation in practices that would best be standardized throughout the agency. Some of the issues that have already been initiated to be addressed by the CEDRA management are support for the reorganization of CEDRA that would enhance use of resources, restructure oversight of function, and further consolidate administration and fiscal. They are also working on developing staffing plans and looking at training procedures documentation. So in addition to those specific department-specific policy and procedures, staff also recognizes that many of the issues raised through the audit dictate modification to countywide policy and procedure. To facilitate broader countywide policy and procedure improvement, a working group has been established that will report to your board in the coming months. In conclusion, the audit has been an effective tool for assessing the CEDRA organization and has helped to inform leadership on improvement. In addition to the early implementation efforts, Michael Johnson, the director, and his staff are finalizing a comprehensive implementation plan and intend to address those concerns this fiscal year. Staff recommends the board accept the summary report of the findings for CEDRA and authorize the county executive officer to implement actions that would address those. And I'm happy to take any comments you may have or questions. I know that was somewhat fast, but I didn't want to encumber too much of your time. Also, we do have Kathy Martinez and Clark Moots and their staff here. Thank you.
Questions by any members of the board? Okay, any members of the public have any questions or comments on this item at this time? All right, seeing none, our board has been asked to accept the summary report of findings for 2009 CEDRA audit and authorize the county executive officer to implement, take action to address recommendations.
So moved.
Second, and as a comment.
Under discussion, we have a motion, Rockholm, and second by Wygant. Go ahead, Under.
Yeah, just appreciate, of course, report back after implementation and progress report, and appreciate the work that everybody's done and look forward to some positive results.
And Supervisor Holmes?
Yes, I just wanted to thank you for a very well-written staff report that delineated all the issues that you found and then explained the findings and how they're going to be corrected. I think this is a good template for going out through the rest of our departments. I want to particularly thank Kathy Martinez and her staff and Mike Boots and his staff for working hard to, I think over 4 years it's due to have an audit of this nature, and it was very well done, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
And Supervisor Montgomery?
I wanted to thank you, Allison, for summarizing so well and being so thorough both in the summary and in the staff report. But I also particularly wanted to thank Kathy for getting this information out to us early in this process so that I was able to spend some time over my holiday break reviewing the report in detail. And what I saw there, nothing leapt out at me as being egregious. I mean, it seemed like what we were seeing was some very standard things that come up in bureaucracies, whether large or small, and that CEDRA is taking the appropriate steps to rectifying the problems where identified. So I really wanted to thank your staff for pulling it together, presenting it in a way that it could be read through fairly easily, and then, again, your staff for the staff report in today's report.
Okay, we had a motion by Supervisor Rockholm, second by Wygant. Did I get that right that time? Did I do it right? Okay. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? None? Okay, why don't we go on to item B, please?
Next on the agenda and for your consideration is the proposed CEDRA reorganization. Staff is requesting that you approve a conceptual plan for the reorganization of CEDRA and direct staff to return to your board with actions that would implement that. Land development was last reorganized in 2005 with the creation of CEDRA. During that time, we did have that unprecedented growth. We also had more complex projects that required an organizational structure that facilitated integrated systems for service delivery. The agency concept was implemented for the reasons described in the previous board item, more centralized leadership and increased process improvement, but also to provide resourcing to address growth and processing for large projects. At the time the agency formed, department head positions were designated for areas of major functional responsibility in order to provide the autonomy for decision-making, negotiating, et cetera. Those positions specifically were the planning director, the chief building official, and the director of engineering and surveying. To be brief, but I won't restate the vast benefits of consolidation of the structure that we've had. However, with the downturn in the economy in the last 2 years and with less than optimistic anticipated rates of growth for land development moving forward in the years to come, we would suggest this modification while maintaining cohesive services. CEDRA CEDRA resources have been reduced, and I won't go through all that detail, but basically through layoffs, retirements, attrition, we are not filling vacant positions that are vacant. So consistent with the business practice needs that have evolved, our office is proposing to realign the existing organizational structure. This proposed structure is not only, it accommodates these changes for the service delivery model, but it is more consistent with the working models in other county departments, while sustaining that consolidation function. Additionally, in developing this proposed plan, we have been attentive to opportunities for cost savings as salaries were considered. For example, as part of the proposal review and determined that the environmental coordination position and that function now warrants a reduced salary by 25%. Overall, the substantive changes as a result of the reorganization do include that the planning and building would become divisions of CEDRA. The building official and deputy director of planning would be designated division heads. The CEDRA director specification would be modified to denote the legislative authority of the planning director. A new classification and position of assistant director of CEDRA is also created. And notwithstanding the general broader duties, the assistant director will oversee GIS function, IT, administrative and fiscal operations, and the environmental coordination function. I say notwithstanding broader duties because while there is in the reorganization concerted effort to strengthen fiscal and administrative functions through leadership, it is the case that that position, the assistant director, can and is anticipated to provide necessary oversight for programmatic and technical functions as needed, for example, in the planning department. While this is a newly created position, there is no net new allocation afforded to CEDRA. The environmental coordinator position was originally instrumental in identifying and restructuring environmental review to meet development service need. With those process improvement activities, this position regularly exercised independent judgment and decision-making authority in achieving the priorities of the county. Since the environmental review process is now established and not expected to require that level, the scope has been shifted, and as I said, accordingly, the salary has also. The engineering and surveying department will remain a department within CEDRA. After reviewing the operations, it was concluded that at this time that would be appropriate to maintain that function as an independent department. It is anticipated that sometime in the future we may return to your board with refinements on this organizational structure. Implementation, in terms of fiscal implementation of the reorganization will result in about $125,000 of general fund savings this fiscal year with savings in subsequent years. So in conclusion, staff is requesting that you approve this conceptual plan and direct us to come back with the detail for the technical changes to affect the organizational structure.
Questions by board members? I do have a couple questions. Looking at page 43 of our agenda packet is the proposed chart, staffing chart, subsequent to the reorganization. The position of environmental coordinator being placed over under the assistant director as opposed to reporting directly to the director. I have concerns about that, given that that position is essentially a service function in support of the missions of planning, building, and engineering and surveying. And I think that if that environmental coordinator position were listed, shown more on par with planning, building, engineering, and surveying, with a direct report back to the director, it might provide for a bit more unit cohesion, if you will, in terms of making sure that priorities within the department are aligned in project review. I think it also goes a long way toward removing opportunities for he said, she said, if you will, within, if somebody has a question as to why isn't this moving forward, I think having that lateral alignment with a consistent reporting party, I think keeps everybody at the same table. And I'd like either your comments or Mr. Johnson's comments on that. When you look at that position, the environmental coordinator position, and maybe there's not an answer today. Staff's request is that you receive direction and come back to the board for final action. So maybe during that period you evaluate.
We'd be happy to.
What the pluses and minuses of that would be. But just based on initial comments, Mr. Johnson, do you have any thoughts?
Based upon the statements you made, it would appear that there could be value in having the environmental coordinator position aligned with the service team areas, as that's the environmental coordinators responsible for implementing work prepared by the various staff members. So that is something that the CEO's office and CEDRA can go back and take a look at to see if there is a realignment opportunity here.
Any initial response, or would you rather just wait and take a look at it?
I think that's clearly something that we can consider and looks very practical and reasonable. So we would go back and take a peek.
If you come back and it just doesn't make any sense, just tell me and I'll just shut up.
That's good.
Maybe.
I don't think that's going to happen.
Which part isn't going to happen? Me shutting up part?
Right.
So our board, I'm sorry, any members of the public have any comments on this item at this point before our board takes action? Our board has been requested to approve this conceptual plan, direct staff to return the next available meeting to implement the reorganization plan. The only modification to that request in the motion is that the possibility of moving that environmental coordinator be also looked at this point.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion, Supervisor Rockholm, second Supervisor Montgomery. Supervisor Holmes, question, comment?
Oh, I just wanted to, a lot of times people say that government should be run like a business, and what we're doing here is exactly the same thing that a business would do. We've had a minimal amount of layoffs. I think we had 8 building department layoffs in 2005, in 2008. We've got a hiring freeze. We're not filling positions. So we're obviously downsizing. This is the most opportune time to take a look at the department that we set up 4 years ago, and it was rolled out. It's time to evaluate that and make it more inviting and flexible and meeting the demands of the public. So I think this is an opportune time to do that, and I would gladly support it, and I'll move approval.
We already have a motion by Supervisor Rockholm.
Oh, you do? Okay.
But appreciate your support of his motion. All right. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? None? Okay. We will go ahead with our 9:50 timed item, seeing that there are a few folks here interested perhaps in the PCCP revision and the status of where we are today. This is being led by, as it has for these many years, by Mr. Warren Clark. So, Warren, take it away.
Yeah, my kids are juniors in college right now, and I think when we actually first mentioned the words NCCP in Placer County, they were entering first grade. Just to put it into context, those years. Mr. Chairman, congratulations, members of the board. Pleasure to be here this morning to talk about the PCCP. I'd also like to introduce to my left Christina Snow, well known to the members of the ad hoc committee, but hasn't really seen the board in terms of this particular item. With every program like this, there's some brains behind the outfit, but there's also a cattle prod behind the outfit. And in the case of Christina, I think she shares both of those roles. So pleasure to be before you here this morning. The reason why we're here is based upon direction you gave us on November 3rd to examine, well, I'll back up. On November 3rd, you approved a map at that particular hearing, and that map was intended to serve as the basis around which we would prepare a conservation strategy. You also gave direction on that day to examine alternatives or options as it relates to the eastern boundary of the plan, which today is defined by the District 5 supervisorial boundary. This is the figure that was presented to the board at that November hearing as it relates to the overall PCCP boundary. And what you have is a large unincorporated area in pale yellow.
You have non-participating cities in the dark gray, and then you have the city of Lincoln, who is also seeking regulatory coverage as a partner with the county. So everything you see in pale yellow on that map represents the coverage area based upon the direction and the decisions that you made on November 3rd. If we go back in time, there was actually a portion of the PCCP boundary that was included in District 5, and it was really the upper end of the Coon Creek watershed, which is the dotted line you see on this figure where the green arrow is. That was included in the PCCP at that time because Coon Creek is one of our contributing watersheds to salmon and steelhead and important for water quality. So the idea when the plan was originally put together was to try to cover the entirety of that watershed, as well as a large segment of the Bear River to the north and a large amount of blue oak woodland in the Garden Bar and Big Hill area. The map that was presented to the board, which is the map on the screen, represented the deliberations of many, many meetings with the ad hoc committee, working with the city of Lincoln, coordinating with the wildlife agencies, in consultation with a range of stakeholders, and the board, in fact, on a 5-0 vote, voted to allow that map serve as the basis through which we'd prepare a conservation strategy. The eastern boundary of that map is the District 5 boundary as it comes west, at the extreme western edge. One of the key features of that map, which is probably what we spent the most amount of time talking about, is vernal pool conservation. One of the objectives was to hit at least a minimum of 1-to-1 or 50% preservation of resources. This map, in fact, does that. It did not affect anything on the east. There are no vernal pool resources on the east, so we did not deliberate at length on eastern county issues until about 6 months ago, when we started to talk about our oak woodland issues. At the request of the board and also in coordination with Supervisor Montgomery, we mailed approximately 1,100 letters, as I recall, 1,127 letters to be exact, to the members of the public, people who would get additional regulatory coverage, but who also might be in a reserve area boundary. A public meeting was held at the North Auburn MAC on December 8th. Approximately 45 people attended, plus members of the MAC. A number of questions were raised. 2 property owners in particular were very outspoken in terms of their desire to be included not only within the PCCP boundary, but actually within the reserve boundary, because they have certain conservation interests. We also received correspondence. I believe the board members have received that as part of their package, including a letter from an individual who actually is seeking changes down south and to the west in the Curry Creek area. Our evaluation was focused on District 5, so we only looked at those upper county watershed issues in Coon Creek and the Bear River. While we have knowledge of that property further to the south, we did not evaluate it specifically for purposes of today's discussion. So our recommendation is solely based upon our analysis and conclusions on District 5. And what we find with this District 5 area is that there are a number of benefits. Probably first and foremost is oak woodland conservation. As it turns out, almost half of the need for the anticipated impacts between now and the year 2060 can be met if there are willing sellers present in that portion of the District 5 area that would be added to the PCCP. It also picks up more of the Coon Creek watershed and really an important segment both there and on the Bear River. Also additional connectivity along those 2 major streams. It also provides regulatory coverage for around 7,500 acres of land where they would not receive regulatory coverage through the PCCP today. And then lastly, there are some key willing sellers in that area who have been rather outspoken in terms of their conservation interests. This figure shows really what's at play in terms of the oak woodlands. The crosshatch represents suburban and rural residential development, the footprint of our general plan where we anticipate impacts. As you can see where the 2 blue arrows are, the dark line representing the District 5 boundary. There's a substantial amount of available, unfragmented, large patch size oak woodland in that area, and it's virtually split in half by the District 5 boundary. If the PCCP boundary moves to the east, that land becomes available for conservation. After coordination with Supervisor Supervisor Montgomery, coordination with the various stakeholders, public input that we received at that meeting and in phone calls and correspondence. This is the map that was prepared at a parcel level of detail that would cause the shift to the east. When we put that map into the context of our new reserve boundary, what you find is about 17,000 acres in total is added. It picks up about 1,500 acres of land already preserved. For example, the balance of Hidden Falls. Hidden Falls was cut in half between the District 2 and District 5 boundaries. 7,800 acres of additional regulatory coverage and around 7,600 acres of potential reserve area. And then this is the revised figure compared to the November 3rd figure with that boundary shifting to the east. In summary, you can see in this summary table, we've made some rather substantial changes since the board gave us direction in January of 2007. Existing reserve acreage at that time was almost 8,800 acres. With this change, it's around 14,000 acres of existing conserved lands around which we would build a reserve system. The regulatory coverage area is about 117,000 acres, and the potential reserve acquisition area around 82,000 acres. Given all of the analysis that we've done, given the input we've received from the public, deliberations in the past with the ad hoc committee, it is staff's recommendation that we do include this portion of District 5. Our recommendation is incorporated in your staff report. No formal environmental action or anything is required because this is simply the preparation of administrative draft document. If the board concurs with this recommendation, we'll be completing the conservation strategy and then hopefully moving through the balance of the work program over the next year and into the following year. So with that, I'll conclude our formal remarks and take any questions that the board might have. Thank you.
Questions by board members? Supervisor Montgomery?
I'd like to start by thanking Lauren and his staff and also the folks on the ad hoc committee. When this was brought to our board in November, my real concern was making sure that the public knew that there was a proposal to potentially add some of District 5 back into the PCCP coverage area. I was very impressed that we managed to get, almost 1,200 letters out very quickly, had a very good turnout at the North Auburn MAC. I was very happy to be yelled at by two people who wanted to be included in the conservation piece of this specifically. And it was a really good opportunity to address the public's questions. And something that I really want to raise, because it was a bit of a surprise to me at that meeting, was the biggest concern people had was the potential future development designation. I would say the vast majority of people who came to the meeting were concerned that that meant somehow there was going to be all this unbridled development in their areas, and we were able to assure them at that meeting that really what it meant was that their zoning and underlying land uses which currently exist will not be changing. And they were very happy to hear that. They had pictures of big box stores popping up in their neighborhoods, and uses that might potentially be incompatible with what is already there. And we were able to assure them that that was not at all what we were proposing, and that quite frankly, the areas that those folks lived in tended to be substantially developed already to almost the full potential of their underlying zoning. And that really put a lot of folks' minds at rest. We have since had a number of phone calls. Pat Malberg, my district aide, has taken a number of those, as have I. They have all been on the same topic. I have not had a single phone call from anyone saying that they were opposed to this. Their only concern was, this specter of unbridled development because of the terminology, and we were, as I say, able to put those fears to rest. I also want to thank Anita for publicizing the meeting today. She did send out press releases. We did get it up on the county website because one of the things, again, that we discussed in November was that we needed to make sure that the public had a number of opportunities to come and give their input. So I'm hoping that there are folks here today who have comments on this, and just really looking forward to hearing what you have to say. And again, just thanking county staff for being so proactive in creating a potential new map, getting the information out, answering the questions and the concerns that the public had. And my hope, based on what I've seen, is that after this discussion today, we move ahead with your recommendation.
So what you're saying is Auburn Valley doesn't need a Walmart?
They didn't seem to think they needed a Walmart. Let me put it that way.
All right. Any other board members have any other comments? Okay. I see a number of folks from the public who have, over the years, expressed at least a passing interest in the PCCP. Is there anybody that wishes to address the board at this time? No nobody at all wishes to address the board at this time on the side. Yeah, I'm sure that's what that means, Rocky. Everybody's happy. That's it. All right, we will then entertain a motion to direct staff and the ad hoc committee to incorporate that portion of District 5 that's depicted on Exhibit B.
Move approval of item 3 on our board agenda.
Okay. Motion Supervisor Montgomery, second by Wygant. Any comments under discussion, Mr. Wygant?
Yeah, just presuming we're going to go forward with this motion, I think it is a tremendous addition to the conservation strategy by way of the map. It makes a lot of sense in terms of watershed management. And then I just want to comment that we're going to be entering a phase now with soon to be submitting a plan and a conservation strategy, but there still will be a lot of time for the public to participate. There'll be time for tweaking and resolving some details. So I encourage everyone to stay involved and congratulate staff for all the work to date and look forward to finishing it up as quickly as possible.
And before we call for the question, just wanted to acknowledge that Supervisor Montgomery stepped into her position while there was some controversy around this in her district, and I'm one that firmly believes that by taking this action, all we are doing is enhancing opportunities for property owners in the North Auburn area, and certainly not taking anything away from anybody. And so I appreciate you taking the step to reintroduce this item on behalf of your constituents. So thank you for that. All right, all in favor, please say aye. 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 Opposed? None? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a little bit of time before committees, so let's move on to item 6C, item to be presented by Mary. Where is Mary? There she is. Actually, Mary, why don't you give a minute, let folks that were here for that one item, let them kind of filter out. Okay.
Good morning, Chairman Euler, board members. Mary Hurtigan from the County Executive Office. Today we're requesting that your board authorize Supervisors Euler, Holmes, Wygant, and CEO Tom Miller to travel to Washington, D.C. February 1st through the 4th to meet with elected and appointed officials from the United States to discuss legislative and regulatory interests to the county over which federal officials have jurisdiction. Annually, the Board of Supervisors approves the legislative platform that articulates the board's proposals and priorities. Your board approved the county's 2010 legislative platform last month. During the February 2010 Washington, D.C. trip, board members will meet with federal officials to discuss the county's 2010 federal priorities. Federal funding priorities include continued funding for the proposed regional wastewater treatment project, additional funding for public safety communications project, transportation funding, and funding for the Placer Legacy Program and PCCP. Over the past 10 years, the board has successfully advocated for more than $105 million in federal funding for county projects and priorities. Last year, the county received nearly $2 million in federal appropriations for the proposed wastewater treatment project and the county's ongoing biomass utilization efforts. The estimated travel, lodging, and related incidental costs are approximately $1,625 per supervisor. The total estimated cost of approximately $4,875 for the 3 board members is included in the county's 2009-10 budget. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
I think just one clarifying point. I believe it's the 1st to the 5th, is it not?
It's February 1st through the 4th, returning on the 4th.
Thought I got something yesterday saying that we came back on the 5th. I mean, I'm happy if it's the 4th.
I'll confirm your travel plans. But
I'm pretty sure I received something yesterday stating that we didn't return until the...
I'd be happy to check with your office.
Just want to make sure that if the request is specific to those dates, that the board's action be flexible enough to recognize that if it is the 5th, that's authorized by the board, no subsequent action, would have to come back. So, Tony, I don't know if you have any thoughts along those lines. I just see staff recommendation identifying specific dates, and I know that yesterday I received something. I don't know, maybe you guys are making me stay a day longer. A reason for that?
There was a special email just for you. Now, I think the direction of the board and the notice to the public is that the 3 board members are traveling to Washington, D.C. to meet with federal elected and appointed officials to carry out business of the county, and that whether it's February 1st through 4th or February 1st through 5, I think the direction of the board in this matter would be clear. There are, of course, constraints, which I will advise you in a memo about not 3 of you getting together and having a meeting while you're back in Washington. So, other than that, I think the action covers the request.
Okay.
Thank you for the point.
Thank you. Comments by any board members? Any member of the public have any comments on this item? I'll just say that it's my first time going back with the board to Washington since I don't think I traveled back. I don't know if we were doing a federal legislative trip when I served in the early 90s, but don't think I made a trip back there then. As chairman, I look forward to hopefully representing our interests well back there. And I know philosophically there are some that question the need for this, and unfortunately, while federal, state, and local government is layered the way that it is, both in regulatory control and control of dollars, the answer is yes. It is necessary that our board have its interests represented both at the state and the federal level, and I don't think there's anybody better to speak on behalf of the interests of Placer County than your elected representatives. And so I look forward to working with Supervisor Holmes and Supervisor Wygant back in Washington to make sure that whether it's the PCCP, wastewater-related issues, what have you, that they understand what our concerns are, and that they also hear loudly and clearly the message that if you want to direct us to do things at the local level, please be sure to include a check with your directions. So, Supervisor Montgomery, you have a comment?
Yeah, I wanted to add to that. The county has made great strides in the past year in terms of reducing travel and other similar expenditures. In this case, I think this is a critical trip. I did go last year. I'm not going this year. But I will say that it became very clear to me the importance of face-to-face meetings with our elected and our appointed representatives at the federal level. Even though Mary and her staff does an incredible job of getting a binder of information to those folks that lays out what we're there to talk to them about, they often don't quite get it until we've sat down with them and explained it and really made our case personally. So I think this is an incredible value for money. I think it's great bang for buck. You know, while philosophically I think cutting travel expenses is a great thing, this is not the place to do it.
Supervisor Wygant?
And I'd just add, Kirk, yeah, you're right. We, I believe, hired our federal advocate in, I think, 98, 97
Yes.
perhaps,
Mm-hmm.
98. And since that time, we've essentially been doing these trips. We started going back on cap to cap, but our advocate recommended that we come back separately and earlier to accommodate the budget cycle more effectively. And clearly, I know staff has the number and we can make it readily available to the public, but we've literally received tens of millions of dollars in monies that I would argue we wouldn't have gotten had we not been doing these trips and doing it strategically and face-to-face. Not only do you have a chance to meet with our electeds, but with their staff, you have a chance to answer questions, you have a chance to follow up on their questions and get them information that I think helps them and convinces them that our needs are real, that our needs have a connection to the federal efforts and the budgetary process. So I think, again, whereas it's important to cut our costs and keep an eye on all of our expenditures as much as possible, this is an investment upon which I think we have huge returns.
Supervisor Holmes?
And I think it's also important that we show the elected and appointed representatives back there they've sent us money. We need to show them what we've done with that money, what we're going to do with that money, and why we need the continued support for our projects in the area. So that's why another critical reason why we should go back.
Okay. A motion by Supervisor Rockholm, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Supervisor Montgomery to approve travel for Supervisors Euler, Holmes, Wygant, and County Executive Officer Miller to Washington, D.C. Dates to be determined, but approximating the 1st to the 4th. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Aye, opposed? None?
Thank you.
All right. Did you want to?
I was going to whisper to you.
Oh, once we move on to the next item? Okay. Then we'll go ahead and call for item 6D, Cost Savings Task Force Report. Mr. Miller?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Brief introduction in regards to this particular item. The origins of your cost-saving task force went back to February of 2009, whereby in your board's direction for the 2009-10 budget, you also concurred that a number of suggestions that come from your management confidential group be explored and investigated for cost-saving implications, and that began the beginning of these cost-saving committees. There's a number of committees that were established, automation and information technology, benefits, organizational, purchasing, transportation and miscellaneous. Actually, your November 3rd meeting in 2009, your board did direct action to implement a number of budgetary savings from that set of recommendations, and the yearly cost-saving recommendations that your board directed to be implemented save about $300,000 a year, and those are being implemented as we speak, and some of those were already initiated at the day of that meeting. The recommendations that you have today are a little bit different from those. It goes back to the subject matter of the set of recommendations that were received, over again 200 from the various employees. These recommendations are different in that they consist mostly of organizational practices or other changes that may impact labor agreements or require the discussion with our labor agreement, our labor entities in terms of modifying existing agreements. Nonetheless, they are good ideas. They will receive, if implemented, they'll have substantial cost-saving implications in terms of some of the organizational and benefit cost-sharing ideas that are put out here. And it's a good opportunity to talk about these concepts in open session so that the board understands and the public understands the hard work that you folks do in administering the county-wide budgets. The two groups that are going to be presenting today are the organizational committee, and this deals with really the processes, internal processes of the county, and then the benefits subcommittee, which deals with a lot of how the employee benefits are derived and their basis for that. And I believe first up is Joel Swift, who is the chairman of the organizational subcommittee, and with him is a member of my office who's been assisting and doing all the hard work for that, and deeply appreciate all that work. So Joel, if you'll go ahead and begin the presentation, appreciate that.
Thank you, Tom. Chairman Euler, members of the board, again, Joel Swift, the Deputy Director at Facility Services, and again, serving today as the chair of this organization committee. This ad hoc committee really was asked to address a wide variety of staff recommendations that, as Tom mentioned, focused on the different business practices of the county operations. And what we did was we researched each recommendation and brought in subject matter experts to assist in each evaluation. The first item that we have in front of your board today is a recommendation. It's a very small scale one, but is one that came through the process we want to talk about. Recommendation for the use of standard permit mail for large mailing projects. In this case, we consulted with Leslie Blagg and Lisa Moen from Central Services as the subject matter experts, and Lisa Blagg from Central Services is here today if there's any particular questions about the details. But the background on this comment or this suggestion was that there are opportunities for savings by changing from first-class permit mail to second-class permit mail. And Central Service did some legwork and conducted a study, determined that the county could save approximately $12,000 a year by doing that. What that does logistically is that the delivery time for standard permit mail is increases from 1 to 3 days to 2 to 10 days. So it takes longer. We need to plan ahead. And there are circumstances where permit mail is not allowed, such as tax bills that are required by the law to be mailed using first-class postage. And what we found through many of these discussions was that each of the departments have different business practices that they need to live by and to do their work, but there are certainly opportunities. So the recommendation before your board essentially is to develop and adopt a best practices permit mail policy. And central services would be taking the lead in finalizing this policy, utilized to determine when standard permit mail is most appropriate, and work closely with each of the departments to really maximize that opportunity. They would publicize the policy, reinforce those best practices, and departments should contact central services for assistance and recommendations for these large mailing projects. Again, that means that departments need to plan ahead and maybe allow a week to 2 weeks more before they do some mailing if they want to take advantage of this. They should use that less costly standard permit mail whenever possible. And then final recommendation would be that this policy would be formalized in the county policy and procedure manuals, and that Central Services Division would be responsible to update that mail policy as we move forward where applicable. That's the conclusion of this particular presentation. Mr. Chairman, I don't know if you want me to go through all three of them or have discussion of each as you go.
I think, seeing as there are only three, let's go ahead and get through the three, and then if board members have questions on the individual items, and come back and address those.
Very good. Thank you. The second recommendation involves contract services. And this topic combines three conflicting yet related suggestions from staff surrounding the best use of contract services to deliver county services. These suggestions are evaluating outside contracts for a variety of services such as routine landscape maintenance, general maintenance, some county services, custodial parks, fleet, and other services. On the other hand, there was a recommendation to eliminate or reduce the use of outside services, consultants, contracts, and vendors that could be reintroduced into the county workforce and performed by existing staff. So you can see we were juggling a couple of different perspectives. And the third was actually to expand the second and evaluate and possibly offer those contract services to other agencies. In this case, we consulted with a much larger group of subject matter experts, including Jim Bogan, Procurement Services, Chris Artem from Probation, Health and Human Services, Risk Management, and Jerry Carden from County Council. It's certainly worth noting, obviously, that our role here was really evaluating this proposal, and it's not one of an issue that's really for your designated contract negotiation team. However, the fiscal impact of contract services are considerable to the county operations. And for the fiscal year of 08-09, the county contracted for services totaling approximately $82 million. So it's a large piece of the operation. We found that many of the proposed suggestions are in fact already in practice after we talked to each of the departments involved. And that's documented in greater detail in your board package. I won't go into the higher level of detail. We certainly did also find that there are a lot of opportunities to improve those business practices with regard to use of contracts as how we deliver county services. And the recommendation that came from all of that really is that the county should develop and communicate a set of best practices for contract services. This discussion, again, would need to be led by the department heads, the county executive office, and of course your board, and guided by the team that's designated by your board to negotiate with the employee unions. The organizational committee recognizes it's not really our role in such negotiations, but these recommended business practice improvements could be implemented by departments to improve how we deliver those services. So some of these best practices include a template for decision-making for departments to use in deciding when and where to use contract services or county staff, and develop tools for identifying what services can be delivered more efficiently by contract providers, and to identify the right sizing for staffing based on long-term sustainable staffing levels for each individual department. Taking advantage of the competitive business bidding process wherever possible. That's one of the key points that we've seen in many of our bids recently, but the procurement services pointed out that we have a lot of contracting entities that are very interested in bidding county work. We're a good customer. Sharing those costs with other agencies where applicable, and there are many instances right now where there are departments that do in fact work collaboratively with outside agencies to reduce costs and also to share some of those opportunities. Ultimately, this would be considered some changes in the administrative rules that may be necessary to implement the best practices, and that organizational development would take the lead in developing training and helping staff become even more proficient at managing contracts. Ultimately, we would also look at assigning a work group of representatives from key departments to work with OD to develop the best practices, and that work group would further evaluate the contract data that we get from the accounting process to develop recommendations of potential areas for cost savings through contracted services. The third and final organizational committee item that we have today would be to develop a procedure manual and training for the Board of Supervisors agenda review process. The committee discussed the challenges associated with the timely development and submission of agenda items to the County Executive Office and to the Clerk of the Board for biweekly Board of Supervisor meetings and opportunities to implement business process improvements. Currently, there is no up-to-date county-wide reference document that delineates the format, timeline, or contact requirements for this essential activity in county government. As a result, there is a significant amount of staff time consumed by departments who are trying to perfect their board items and go through the layers of review entailed to have a proper submission to your board. The public is best served when we do have a consistent and concise agenda items as presented to your Board of Supervisors. So the additional time anticipated to develop a procedural manual was seen as captured as savings in document preparation, editing, review, and streamlining the process. Again, this is one of those productivity enhancements that Mr. Miller mentioned. It's difficult to quantify the exact cost savings, but it was an item that through the process, everybody felt was important to bring forward to your board. And so the recommendation would be that the CEO and clerk of board staff would develop and maintain the procedure manual and checklists for the departments to use as a reference for submitting the agenda items, and work with organizational development to develop the routine training covering this, and then again formalizing that in the county policy and procedure manuals. With that, that's the extent of our presentation for these three
Questions by any
items.
board members? So now at this point, any members of the public have any questions on these recommendations to the board? Okay, it's a pleasure of the board.
To accept the second set of recommendations.
Okay, we have a motion by Supervisor Rockholm, second by Supervisor Holmes. Just under discussion, first of all, thank you for the work that you and others are doing on these committees. These committees thus far have proven very valuable to the board in providing feedback on areas of operational improvement, reviewing various purchase activity, transportation, technology, and later as we convene to discuss committee assignments, it would be my hope that we as a board would discuss whether supervisors would be interested in participating. I mean, I know Supervisor Montgomery in the past has expressed some opinions in regard to transportation-related items and technology-related items. We have a couple of committees that serve that. We have organizational committees. So as not to throw in any kind of noticing requirement and all the rest, it would be my request that the board, if we are looking to invite a member of our board to participate on these committees or to work with these committees, that we not assign more than 2 to any one committee, because that would then require notification and all kinds of fun things that we want to try to avoid just for cost and expediency's sake. But I think we've reached a point with these committees where I think having board participation would be fruitful in moving forward a number of the items that are being discussed. And so just ask for my colleagues to consider as we go into committee discussions in a bit whether or not you're interested in participating in any of the 5 committees. We had a motion by Supervisor Rockholm and a second by Supervisor Holmes to approve the recommendations of staff from the cost savings committees. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I would pass the baton, if you will, to Rick Erie with the Engineering Surveying Department for the Benefits Committee items.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Joel. Good
Before
morning,
Rick
Chairman.
begins,
Yes.
if I just could quickly acknowledge Catherine Ripperly. I think I pointed her out since she was a member of the office, but I did not mention her by name, so I apologize for that. But I know she's done a lot of work behind the scenes organizing these committees and staffing them.
And just really quickly, though our committees is scheduled for 10:30, we're going to take all the rest of the department head items before we then, we will adjourn to conference room A. Anybody that's interested in observing the committee assignment process is more than welcome to join us in conference room A as we discuss what committees the board members will serve on, but we will go ahead and work through the remainder of the department head items before we take that item.
Great.
So, with that.
Good morning, Chairman, and congratulations. And board members, good morning. I'm Rick Urey, Chairman of the Benefits Committee, and I'm also joined here today with Mark Rathke, who's on our committee and has done 3 of the 4 items that we're presenting today. We also have Jeff Bell in the audience for the 4th item, if there's any questions regarding that, and of course, Denise Medlin, our CEO coordinator for our committee. We have 4 items before you today, and they can be found, I believe, beginning on page 58 of your board package. And as noted in that staff report, these are meet and confer items, and if approved by your board, will be sent to the labor team for potential negotiations with the union. The first item is to require use of comp time off instead of cashing it out. In fiscal year 8-9, the county paid out about $1.2 million in CTO cash outs. And if approved, therefore, could save the county some significant money. The Clearinghouse Committee recommends that although this idea may not have readily quantifiable savings, it does warrant implementation in your board's consideration. And I can continue on with the next 2, or we can open this up for discussion. Okay. Item number 2, unpaid mandatory time off with accrual of paid leave. In fiscal year 9-10, the county implemented 12 MTO days. However, some of the employees have been unable to participate due to the essential services that they provide. This suggestion recommends that those employees who have to work on MTO days not be paid and that their hours be banked as paid time off. If this idea is implemented, the county could save about $960,000 a year based on the Sheriff's Department's information alone. Additional savings would be realized if this was implemented countywide. The Clearinghouse Committee recommends that although this idea may not have readily quantifiable savings, it does warrant implementation in your board's consideration. The next item is a recommendation to extend the vacation cash-out moratorium and add another 40 hours to the accrual limits. As you know, in fiscal year 9-10, a moratorium or suspension on the cashing out of vacation time was implemented with an additional 40 hours added to the employees' accrual limits. Since the inception of vacation cash-outs in 2006, the county averages a payout of about $250,000 per year. In reality, implementing this idea actually is deferring payment to the future. At such time, the economy improves and our revenue returns more to a normal state. The Clearinghouse Committee recommends that although this idea may not have readily quantifiable savings, it does warrant implementation in your board's consideration. Okay, and then the last item is to increase the employees' Purge contribution. Most employees pay 1% of their 8% share, while the county pays the remaining 7% on their behalf. Other employees, such as correctional officers and probation officers, pay more into PERS, or soon will be paying more into PERS, based on their contract. Based on those employees who currently pay 1%, each additional percentage they pay would save the county about $725,000 per year, and that's all dependent on salaries and everything else that goes along with their package. The Clearinghouse Committee recommends that although this idea may not have readily quantifiable savings, again, it does warrant implementation and your board's consideration. That concludes our presentation. If your board chooses to approve these suggestions, they will be sent to the labor team for potential negotiations to the union, and with that, we're available to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Four recommendations from the Benefits Subcommittee. Any members of the board have any questions on any of their items? And seeing none, any members of the public have any questions on any of the recommendations of the Benefits Subcommittee? Bring it back to the board for action.
Second.
A motion by Supervisor Holmes, a second by Supervisor Rockholm to approve the 4 recommendations of the Benefits Subcommittee. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We move on to item number 7, County Executive, Economic Development. Mr. Schneider, I believe. There he is.
Did Jim do something to offend everybody?
Yeah, I think so. Shower, Jim.
What?
Shower.
Shower.
People around you left. Hi, Mr. Schneider. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. The item before you this morning is to approve a resolution authorizing the execution of a service provider subgrant from the Golden Sierra Job Training Agency in the amount of $82,600 to provide layoff aversion services to businesses in Placer County, approve a budget revision, and authorize the county executive officer to execute any related documents or contracts. The Golden Sierra Job Training Agency has awarded $82,600 in funding provided by the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act of 2009 to Placer County. Known as Vital Assets Funding, this will provide business assistance, layoff aversion, and employee retention services from July 1st, 2009 to June 30th, 2010, which means we're about halfway into the cycle and we need to put the pedal to the metal on this item. What's important to mention are the deliverables of this program. It's also important to note that the program is potentially a 2-year commitment, and the contract will be issued annually. This is a little like the rapid response grants that we received in prior years. The deliverables include provision of information on Workforce Investment Act, business services, rapid response activities, and one-stop services to 400 employers via on-site or in-person calls, and we have a database that we've generated with about 400 at-risk businesses throughout the county. Also conducting 240 business labor market surveys to determine employer hiring and business retention needs. Additionally, devising layoff aversion strategies for 100 employers. Provision of rapid response information to 4,400 employers via mailings or electronic needs. And finally, services resulting in the retention or creation of 100 jobs. And I think that's very conservative based on our past practices. I think with just a handful of employers, we could accomplish that particular goal. Earlier this morning, I attended Assemblyman Nilo's legislative hearing in Roseville, and I think our employers out there could use all the one-on-one hand-holding and business outreach that we can conduct based on what the state's doing with taxes and the regulatory environment. It's also important to mention in conclusion that these expenditures will be fully reimbursed by revenues, so there will be no direct impact on the general fund. HHS will provide increased CalWORKs funding in an amount equal to the grant to offset the general fund contribution received in this current fiscal year. This will be a terrific opportunity to accentuate and embellish our partnership with HHS and the Golden Sierra Job Training Agency. And I have Marcy Schmidt, our band supervisor, with me today, and Michael Indiveri, also representing Golden Sierra. So with that, I will urge the board to approve the resolution.
Questions by board members? Any members of the public have any questions on this item? Motion by any board member on the item? Motion Supervisor Rockholm, second by Wygant to approve staff recommendation. We will call the roll.
Rockholm?
Yes.
Wygant?
Yes.
Holmes?
Yes.
Euler?
Aye. And Supervisor Montgomery temporarily absent. Okay, moving on to item number 8. Mr. Cunha.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Roy Cunha. I'm the Program Manager for Placer County Office of Emergency Services. This item asks that you adopt a resolution approving the California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection Cooperative Fire Protection Agreement for fiscal year 2009-2010 in the amount of $8,392,171. Additionally, it asks that you authorize the chairman to sign 5 copies of the agreement, and also asks that you authorize the extended payment period into next fiscal year in accordance with Exhibit C, Item 3B of the contract. And I'll explain that a little bit further as I get into the presentation. This contract amount represents a little over $1,073,000 increase year over year from fiscal year 2008-2009. This increase is principally due to increased service levels within the Sunset Industrial Area, specifically funded by the United Auburn Indian Community. Those increases are fully funded, and it represents about a 14.6% year-over-year contract increase within that area. For the contract, what Placer County receives is all-hazard fire and emergency services protection to nearly 1/3 of the total county area, with firefighters operating from a total of 8 fully manned stations within the Placer County fire area. Those stations being in near Alta, Station 33 in Alta, Station 30 near Colfax, the Bowman Station, North Auburn Ophir Fire or North Auburn Station, the Ophir Station, additionally the Lincoln Station, Sunset Industrial Area Station at the casino, and then also Dry Creek. Additionally, the system supports over 100 resident and permanent volunteers operating from 6 additional stations, and then additionally the system supports over 50 apparatus that support the fire system, as well as the maintenance of the stations themselves, all of the stations. To discuss the extended period payments, by authorizing the extended period payments associated with this item, your board is authorizing Placer County to continue payments to CAL FIRE into next fiscal year when technically this contract is no longer in force. That provision exists within the contract, and it's a recognition of the fact that the contract does generally come to us late each year, and it is dependent on state budget resolution each year, which we don't usually have that state budget resolution until end of the first quarter, best case. This contract does not change the contribution of the general fund to the fire fund. That contribution is the same as it was year over year. The specific amount that is allocated to the contract this year is about 5.7% of the total contract costs, or $476,000. Subject to any questions that you might have, that's all that I have in the formal presentation.
Any questions from board members? I have a question, Ray. What is the total contribution now by the United Auburn Indian Community?
Their total contribution is a little over $2.5 million to the contract cost. And for that, they have 7-person staffing at that station, a full truck company as well as an engine company.
Thanks.
They got that new truck, too.
Yeah. Any comments or questions from anyone in the public? Hearing none.
Move approval.
Second. Moved and seconded to approve staff recommendation regarding the $8.4-ish million contract with CAL FIRE. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Roy.
And next we have Health and Human Services. Item 9.
Good morning, members of the board. My name is Graham Knaus. I'm the Director of Administrative Services for your Health and Human Services Department. And I'm here before you today seeking approval of our mid-year budget revision for the 2009-10 fiscal year. I should note before I go through some of the specific detail related to this budget revision that the good news is this has zero county general fund impact. These are 100% federal and state dollars, so that's some level of good news as a starting point to this. I should also note that these changes reflect our continual drive to maximize the drawdown and the utilization of federal and state dollars to get the best bang for our limited county general fund dollars in this rough budget climate. The budget revision is comprised of two different categories of adjustments. The first relate to reconciling final state budget cuts and funding allocations for a number of our programs. Back when your board finalized our 2009-10 state budget in September, there was still significant uncertainty with respect to some of our final state funding allocations. And this budget revision reconciles that to the actual funding that we've received to the good of $2.8 million, primarily in the area of the human services in our department. I should also note that that specifically relates primarily to two of our programs, one dealing with both of which have very little county general fund associated with them, one dealing with our Medi-Cal eligibility determination, and the second dealing with our CalWorks Welfare to Work program. And this budget revision does have some interaction with the with item number 7 on your agenda that Dave Snyder just presented to you with respect to the economic development piece and those dollars. The second category of adjustments are related to newly awarded grants and funding that we've received since your board adopted the final budget. They total $2.3 million and are linked to previously board-approved items primarily related to the H1N1 prevention and the clinics that we've been operating over the past couple of months. So it's related to that item. It's related to substance abuse treatment grant that we've received that'll be targeted to youth, some state mental health grant dollars, and then finally an in-home supportive services fraud prevention and intervention plan that was approved by your board in November and jointly developed by our department and the DA's office. I should also note that in addition to the detailed budget revisions, we're seeking your approval with respect to some fixed assets to both have authority for the purchasing manager to purchase those assets, and then secondly, to add those to the county's master fixed asset list. Those items break down in 3 different areas. One also related to H1N1 in terms of the fixed assets needed for our H1N1 mobile vaccination clinics, which will have significant benefits to us over the long term in enhancing our public health emergency response capabilities. A second piece dealing with some HVAC units in our Auburn animal shelter that are long overdue to be replaced, and then a third dealing with data encryption and document imaging equipment that's required to meet federal and state data security requirements in our Human Services Division. We, as you well know, the state of Human Services funding is in flux and has been for some time. We will be going through our detailed analysis of the state budget that just came out last Friday, and look forward to returning to your board with updates in terms of what the impact is to our budget, both to the extent that there's anything that's occurring in the current year for 2009-10 and also going into 10-11. And our primary drive will be to continue to work underneath your direction in terms of identifying sustainable models of service delivery that meet the critical needs of human services in the health and human services within the community. And with that, I'm available for any questions that you may have about these items and would request your approval as outlined on the agenda.
Supervisor Wiggett?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Left that on from your chairmanship, okay. Any questions by any other board members? Any members of the public wish to comment on this item? Since items 9A, B, and C are contingent upon our approval of item 9AA, I'm assuming we can take all three in one motion. So I'd entertain one motion to approve.
Approval of item 9A and then A, B, and C.
Okay. Motion Supervisor Rockholm, second Supervisor Montgomery. Roll call, please.
Rockholm?
Yes.
Wygant?
Yes.
Holmes?
Yes.
Euler?
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we will move on to item 9B, Adult System of Care. Maureen, this is yours.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Maureen Bauman with the Adult System of Care. The first item I have for you is an opportunity for continued use of federal funds. This is actually the 7th renewal of a grant with the Department of Housing and Urban Development for permanent and supportive housing in the amount of approximately $300,000. It's a 12-month grant beginning December 1st, 2009. The required match for these funds is approximately $29,000 in county general funds, and I would note that those costs are included in our current year final budget. Permanent supportive housing helps persons that are homeless, that are also mentally ill or disabled, by providing rental subsidies for housing and support services such as employment and community resources, the goal being to help people to become self-sufficient. Currently, there are 31 single adults in this program and one with a minor child. The permanent supported housing would celebrate that 97% of the folks have been in this program for more than 7 months. We think the longevity of that duration is going to help them to become more stable for themselves and their families. And last year, we'd like to point out that 63% of those exiting the program had either obtained employment or had gotten qualified for grants, which would allow them to get reduce their use of county general fund programs. So we feel like we are making headway in terms of helping these people really to become productive citizens and to be more self-sufficient. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions and recommend approval.
Questions by any board members? Seeing none, any members of the public have any questions on this item? Motion by Supervisor Rockholm, second by Supervisor Holmes to approve item 9B. All in favor, please say aye. 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 Opposed? None. Thank you.
Our second item, my second item is, I'm again excited to bring forward for your consideration an opportunity to take advantage of some new one-time federal funds. There's 3 actions that will be required by you. 1, to approve submission of a justice assistance grant for the operation of a substance abuse offender treatment program, estimated to be $448,000 to the California Emergency Management Agency. Also to sign the required certificate of assurance and to authorize the Director of Health and Human Services to accept the grant if awarded and to sign all resulting contracts, certifications, amendments, or revisions to the same. This grant is 100% covered by the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, so there are no county general funds associated with this action at all. Just a little bit of background. As you remember, in 2009-10 current year, the state did eliminate what we call Proposition 36 for substance abuse treatment for those eligible persons for certain crimes that went through the criminal justice system. Placer, prior to that time, had been serving about 300 residents each year with treatment and supervision services for that program. In fact, the treatment portion of that program put Placer County in the top 15% of the state in terms of completion rates of our treatment program. This program gives us a one-time opportunity to use federal funds to provide some assistance to those folks that continue to be eligible for services under Penal Code 1210, which is the same legal definition of the Prop 36 program. So this one-time grant opportunity will provide substance abuse treatment services delivered through both county-operated services and community providers, and is projected to serve 250 Placer County residents. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions and recommend approval.
Questions by board members? Seeing none, any member of the public wish to address this item? We have a motion.
Motion approval.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We will take the motion by Supervisor Montgomery and second by Supervisor Rockholm to approve the item. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? None? Thank you.
Thank you.
And then item number 10, probation.
Good morning. Before I get started, I have a brief handout project summary, just a brief outline of the grant and some of the details for the board.
And once again, please, your name for the record.
Marshall Hopper, Adult Probation Manager. The Probation Department has submitted
Give us 1 minute for the court to hand these to us, and we'll be able to sing right along with you here. Thank you. Go ahead. Thank you.
The Probation Department has submitted for a block grant in the amount of $390,642. The strict application guidelines require that the grant be filed by December 31st, which we have completed and submitted to CalEMA. This is the first time that state funding has been allocated to provide seed money for all 58 probation departments within the state for adult offenders. It is specifically designed to implement evidence-based supervision programs designed to reduce future commitments to the California Department of Corrections. Program implementation will include partial reimbursement of staff salary benefits, probation officer training, IT support, evidence-based programming for adult offenders granted probation in Placer County. The breakdown of our grant cycle for the first year, October 2009 through September 2010, would be funding in the amount of $122,404, followed by the second year of $268,238. The department will utilize this funding to implement an evidence-based supervision program and identify specific probation officers to become train-the-trainers. What this means is we will utilize funding to become self-sufficient, and the county will incur no future costs because we will train our officers in cognitive behavior and therapy and counseling so we can provide these services to adults within and continue into the future. In addition to the current block grant, Senate Bill 678 identifies future funding for probation departments throughout the state. The state will evaluate the numbers sentenced to the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, and each county will receive additional funding based on our reductions as a result of these programs. Our department has submitted the application in order to meet the state deadlines without putting funds in jeopardy. Should the board opt not to pursue this application, we will rescind it. If approved by the board and grant funding is awarded, we will bring this matter back before the board for the appropriate budget modifications. Thank you. I have any questions?
Questions by any board members? Tony?
I would like to recommend that included within the proposed action, not only will you authorize the chief probation officer to see it, but ratify the action that took place before December 31st, in case somebody at the state looks at the grant and wonders whether that was done right. We'll have a record that the board ratified the actual action.
Okay.
So moved.
Okay, we have motion Supervisor Rockholm, second by Supervisor Holmes. Any members of the public wish to address this item before we take action? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, none. Okay, we have one last timed item. What we're going to do is we will adjourn here, reconvene over in conference room A to discuss committee and commission assignments. Pursuant to our notification of item number 4, we will then, can we then immediately adjourn to closed session without having to come back here? Okay, we will then immediately adjourn to closed session, in which we will
Take up the items on page 4 of your board agenda. Item 11, several pieces of litigation, conference with labor negotiators. While in closed session, the board will adjourn as the board and convene as the Placer County In-Home Supportive Services Public Authority, discuss labor negotiations therein, and then reconvene as the Board of Supervisors. Report will come later.
Thank you.